Welcome. We're very happy to have you joining us today. For some of you, it's late at night. For others, it's middle of the day. And for us in New York here, where I'm calling from, it is early in the morning. This is Christine from IRN USA, and I'm joined by Bethany, also from IRN USA, and Sahar from American Councils. And we've been working over the last several months actually to put this webinar together as the final webinar in the series from this year, 2014. We, over the past year, have had some really wonderful topics. We've looked at how to organize a Global Youth Service Day project. We've looked at professional development. We had a specialized training on using LinkedIn for your own career path and for expanding and leveraging your alumni networking for your career development. And we've looked at environmental programming as well. How do you create projects around environmental issues? And so this has just been a really, really fantastic year with a lot of really great participation by alumni and really great webinars. We've had wonderful speakers. And so we're really happy to be closing out the year with a topic that's very important, not just to you as alumni as you put together projects in your communities, but it's also such a major part of the YES program in and of itself. And so we're really happy to have two very experienced speakers, an alum who you'll be meeting later, and a guest speaker, Rahat, who is also an expert on the topic. So again, we're very happy for this fifth now webinar in the series of alumni webinars that is recorded. And please feel free to use the chat box. Don't forget to let us know what country you're from and to put your dot on the map. And welcome. I'll hand it over to Sahar now, who's going to do a more in-depth introduction of the topic today and of the two speakers who are going to be joining us. And I'll see you back at the end of the webinar, and hopefully again for next year for our continuing series of.
Hello, everyone. This is Sahar Taman, and I work on the YES program. And I work for American Councils, but I work with all of our partner organizations on all over the world on the YES program. So we're 47 countries, give or take a few. I work with YES alumni, again, all over the world, and I have an opportunity to work on providing workshops for YES alumni, provide grants for YES alumni, do a lot of whatever we can to do professional development and personal development. The webinar series is a part of that alumni programming, and in addition to the several topics that Christine and Bethany at IRN mentioned, we thought to end 2014 with a new topic, which is about conducting interfaith dialogue, maybe have a discussion actually specifically on intrafaith dialogue. We thought we'd learn from a speaker, an expert. We have with us today Mr. Rahat Husain, and also learn from a YES alum who is Waskito Jati. A lot of YES alumni say they're very interested in conducting interfaith dialogues in their community or interfaith dialogues. Many of them say it's an important topic in their communities. There are issues of conflict that may come from these types of tensions. And many of them say, well, I'd love to do it, but I don't necessarily have the knowledge or know how to go about it. So this webinar will give us some insight. Let me start by thanking our two speakers for joining us today and introducing them. So we have Mr. Rahat Husain, and Mr. Husain is a columnist with a newspaper in Washington, D.C., the Washington Times, as well as an online paper called CDN News. So he has an interest in Islam and world events, and in the context of also what is happening in the United States. And so he writes on, a variety of issues. And if you are able to do a Google search, you will find a variety of very interesting columns he's just recently written. So he's currently the Director and Legal and Policy Affairs, the Director of Legal and Policy Affairs at UMMA, which is actually a very innovative and smart name for his organization. It's the Universal Muslim Association of America, UMMA. As we know, UMMA refers to the concept of the entire Muslim world, a unified Muslim world. Very clever. This organization actually is a very important organization in the United States. As you know, in the United States, we're very lucky to have a dynamic interfaith society, a lot of people reaching out to each other, a lot of organizations that work together. And I know UMMA is one of the organizations that works with many other American organizations, such as the Islamic Society of North America, which is another large organization, a Muslim organization. Mr. Husain was also the director, the executive director of the Islamic Information Center, where in that role he provided a lot of information about the Shia community, the Shia community's issues, their interests, and their concerns. And he works on these issues by dealing with the U.S. Congress, federal agencies, think tanks, policy institutes, and all other organizations really to advocate on both a political and humanitarian landscape for the Shia community. He's right now in Washington, D.C., and he is born in the United States, and his family, he explained, is originally from India. Another interesting thing to note, and we'll learn more about, is that he is a Sayyid, so his family are among the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. So he'll, for those of us that know, he'll be able to tell us, that don't know, will tell us more about that and so many other interesting information. Now I'll talk a little bit about Waskito Jati. Waskito is from Indonesia, YES alum from Indonesia, and he was in Charlotte, North Carolina. From his YES year was 2008-2009. And he said he had come from a very interesting religious upbringing in Indonesia, attending Islamic schools and Islamic boarding schools. And when he was in North Carolina, he had an opportunity to really learn about religious diversity. And currently he studies at the, he does study Islamic Sharia and politics at Sunan Kalijaka State Islamic University in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. So his thesis is on jihad and international law. I've had the opportunity to meet Waskito, actually in Indonesia, and he has very active in the Alumni Association. He has been president of the Indonesian Alumni Association, which is a really large YES Alumni Association, and he's also currently the vice president of the Yogyakarta chapter. And the Alumni Association in Indonesia is part of, the partner is AFS Bina Antara Budaya. And I apologize for some of the probably pronunciations. So I will, from here, go ahead and have both of our speakers come online on video. And welcome to both.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on today's webinar. It might be morning somewhere in United States. It is 9 p.m. here in Indonesia. So good morning and also good evening for all of you coming from Indonesia. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So for this session, I will be asking Mr. Hussein several questions pertaining to the relations between Shia and Sunni. But before that, I see that some of you guys are coming from Qatar, some coming up from Lebanon, there are some coming from Indonesia and South Africa. But for a starter, I just want to say that the knowledge of Shia Islam in different parts of the world is different. For example, in Indonesia, where my community is, Shia is very rare. We have much higher chances of meeting Christians and Buddhists, for example, rather than meeting Shia Islam. So it is very uncommon for us. It is quite a foreign religion for us, foreign school of thought of Islam. That's where many of the prejudices are coming from. That's from there. I would like to ask the first question to Mr. Hussein. With a condition like this, especially in Southeast Asia, where Shia is very rare and very oppressed, how would you answer the questions of what is Shia Islam?
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's very important. A lot of people do not understand what Shia Islam is, who Shia Muslims are, what the purpose of Shiism is. But, a lot of these questions can be answered in a very simple and clear manner. Shiism is a branch of Islam that believes in the concept of imamat. And the concept of imamat is that Allah decided, the Prophet announced, that after Prophet Muhammad was to pass away, that Allah would continue leadership on earth through a series of individuals called the 12 Imams. And those people would not bring a new religion or new beliefs. They would simply provide the most authentic traditions of Prophet Muhammad with accuracy and understanding of the meaning behind Prophet Muhammad's life, his message, and the like. And so Shiism is the belief in Allah, in the Prophet, and the Imams after the Prophet. And the purpose of the Imams was to clarify and continue the original religion that Prophet Muhammad taught us. Was that sufficient, or would you like more information? I'm sorry, Waskito, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, this is Sahar Taman, again, from American Council. It seems that we may have we may not be hearing Waskito, or Waskito may not be hearing us. Is that correct?
No, I can hear you well, Sahar.
Okay, were you able to hear Rahat's answer?
It was in and out.
Were you able to hear Mr. Hussein's answer?
No.
I see.
Okay.
Would you like to try just saying again, Rahat, Mr. Hussein?
Sure. I'll try and speak a little bit louder so you can hear. But basically, Shiism is a very interesting religion, but I think that most people will find that it's not very different than Sunni Islam. The main belief of Shiism is that Allah decreed and the Prophet declared that after the end of Prophet Muhammad's life, that the leadership of Islam would continue in 12 individuals called the Imams. And the purpose of these Imams was not to bring a new religion or a new belief set, but to merely continue and clarify and explain the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, and do so with the authority of God to say, these are authentic, these are the actual teachings of Prophet Muhammad, and they are being understood and explained correctly. And so that is the main belief of Shiism that separates it from Sunniism.
Is that the belief that there are 12 Imam after the decease of Muhammad, peace be upon him, not received well by the Sunni
Islam?
Islam?
We're having a little slow. We're having just a little slow internet connection here. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to ask.
People find the idea confusing. They believe that the end of the prophethood means the end of everything. But I would think that Shiism would say, or Shias would say, that certainly that is not even the belief. I'm sorry? Okay, well, I was saying that Shias would respond that, certainly in Sunni Islam and the other sects of Islam, there is a belief in the Mahdi. There is a belief in the last day and the return of the Mahdi, the return of Prophet Isa, and the like. So certainly, not everything is over, not everything has ended. But some people, they take the imamate as this idea of people being elevated above Prophet Muhammad, as being elevated above Allah, or being elevated to an inappropriate level. But within the Shia belief, these are successors to Prophet Muhammad. They follow him, they're not superior to him, and they do not change his message. So I think there's a lot of confusion as to what Shias believe and a lot of the entailing, practices. But in terms of actual belief, the 12 Imams are their successors. And a lot of the antipathy happens when, there are disagreements as to what actually happened in history. Shias believe certainly that the Prophet declared the imamate and spelled it out in a very succinct and clear manner. People who are not Shia believe otherwise. They believe in a different retelling of history. And
Okay, then when does this division started to happen in history, and what happened? Did it happen right after the passing of Muhammad, or did it happen a couple hundred years after that? And what happened? What is it? What exact event caused this division?
A lot of people like to believe that the separation happened after the death of the Prophet, when there was a dispute on leadership. I would posit that the separation may have had its largest point at that juncture, but it actually began during the Prophet's lifetime. After he gave what is called the farewell sermon, he stopped outside of the city of Makkah in a city called, a place called Ghadir. And he delivered a speech in favor of Imam Ali. From a Sunni point of view, this was merely, an event that was interesting but not of significance. From a Shia point of view, this was his actual final sermon, and this was where he declared Imam Ali to be his successor and to be the leader of Islam after him. When the Prophet passed away shortly thereafter, The Shia point of view was that Imam Ali was the successor, and this was declared by the Prophet. And so, that's not what happened historically. So in that sense, there was a disagreement and there was a dispute. But I would say that the beginnings were at the event of Ghazwa.
Okay, so the event happened. Some say that it happened right after the death of Prophet Muhammad, but also some say that it happened when Muhammad was still alive. My next question would be, right now, in my surrounding, in my community, there are two different opinions. The Sunni Muslim in Indonesia, they condemn Shia quite heavily. They condemn Shia very strongly. You can clearly see signs on the street saying that we should not allow Shia to come to our area, to Yogyakarta in my city, or in Indonesia in general. But I have also been looking at articles and also videos telling the Shia perspective point of view, the Shia perspective, and how it's hard to reconcile between the two. Historically, what is it that create this tension? If this was only, I heard something about Karbala. I heard something about the murder of Imam Hussein. In your what exactly happened at that time, and what is the effect of the murder of Imam Hussein?
Of course, this is a very important question. I'm very glad that you asked this. So what happened historically was that Imam Ali, he was not allowed the chance to become the immediate and first successor to the Prophet. This was, temporally. He became the fourth Caliph. But for Shias, he was always the leader and always the religious and temporal and secular leader. And that was the position of all 12 of the Imams. The other Caliphs at the time, they were very much aware of the Shia belief in the Imams, the Shia following and patronage of the Imams, and the Shias were a minority. However, the Imams themselves, being the grandsons, the great-grandsons, and the only and direct descendants of Prophet Muhammad, garnered significant following in the entire Muslim community, not just amongst certain minorities or certain small groups of Shias, but amongst the larger Muslim world. For many, this became a threat to the ruling powers. The leaders of Bani Umayyah, the Umayyad dynasty and Caliphate in particular, took offense to this and demanded that Imam Ali's son, who was named Imam Hussein being the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, they demanded that Imam Hussein give allegiance to the Umayyad Caliph Yazid. Yazid at the time was known for anti-Islamic acts, for example, the consumption of alcohol, the open criticism of the Quran, the lack of prayers. Basically, he was a secular leader, but he did not seem to have a lot of interest in Islam. And so when he asked Imam Hussein to give allegiance, Imam Hussein refused. This led to a military event in what is now known as Karbala, the city of Karbala, where Imam Hussein and approximately a few dozen of his family members, 72 in total, were besieged by approximately several regiments of Yazid's army, numbering approximately 20,000 people. So 20,000 soldiers versus the Imam Hussein and 72 of his family members. Obviously, you can guess what result happened. Imam Hussein and his family were slaughtered and killed, and the women and children were taken captive. Their hijabs were snatched. They were paraded through the empire. But the Muslim community took great offense to this, that this wasn't just a person named Hussein and his family. these were the grandchildren of the Prophet. This was not only some of his family members, but the majority of his family. And they were slaughtered in a very ruthless and heartless manner, supposedly in the name of Islam. And after that, the Muslim community rose up, and this was actually the reason for the decline of the Umayyad Empire. The Muslim community rose up against them. The Abbasid Empire specifically mentioned the battle at Karbala as the reason for overthrowing the Umayyad dynasty. But after Imam Hussein, there were still 9 more imams, and each of the imams still had a following in the Muslim community. And their successive kings and rulers and sultans and caliphs, they viewed the imams as a threat to their power base. And so there was always a little bit of tension between the Shia communities and the communities that followed the Caliph, based upon this notion of who are the rightful leaders of the religion of Islam. And that's...
Yes. So if I can make a generalization, there are 2 basic differences in between Sunni and Shia. The one which is the first one, which is the more ideological difference, where the Shia believes in the 12th Imam, whereas the Sunni don't. And there are also the difference in terms of historical evidence on, for example, like one of the audience have mentioned in here, the principles and what are the Imam principle based on? Is it based on Quran? Is it based on Sunnah? Or is it based on others? How would you respond to that? Do you think that the difference between the 2 are not only historical but also ideological? And how would you respond to that when many Muslim Indonesians also ask that question? Would you say that there are 12 imams after the death of Muhammad? Is that what are the proof? What are the Sunnah? What are the Quran verses that are telling Muslim about that?
Sure, thank you very much. I would say, maybe in reverse order of the questions you asked, the Quran in Surah 2, verse 124, tells the story of Prophet Ibrahim. Allah tests the Prophet with certain tests in that ayat, and Prophet Ibrahim passes the test. And Allah says, and I quote, "And I will make you an imam to the nations." And Prophet Ibrahim asks, "And what of my offspring?" And Allah says, "This promise will not reach the wrongdoers." So Prophet Ibrahim and his descendants will be imams, and they will not be able to be wrongdoers in that regard. So only wrongdoers or non-wrongdoers are able to be imams. And this is a Quranic proof of the idea of imamat. And we see in history that Prophet Muhammad is a descendant of Prophet Ibrahim. And the Imams are a descendant of Prophet Muhammad. So, except for, of course, Imam Ali, who was the Prophet's cousin. So they are also descended from Prophet Ibrahim through that route. So, Quranically, this is the proof. But I would say also from Hadith, there's a Hadith in Sahih Muslim that is accepted as accurate from every sect of Islam, where the Prophet says, "I am leaving you 2 weighty things, my Quran and my Ahlul Bayt, and they will never separate until the day of judgment." And so Shia Muslims take this as evidence that the Prophet intended for the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, to be at a prominent position within Islam. Your other question was ideological. Is there an ideological difference? The main ideological difference is the belief in the imamate. The other beliefs, the belief that there is only one God, that Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet, that the Quran is our holy book, that we have to pray 5 prayers a day, fast in Ramadan, go on Hajj. All of the other beliefs are completely the same. Yes, there are differences in how we pray, and certain other minor differences. But the belief in the ideology of Islam is...
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next session of the questions. After we've been talking about the difference in terms of ideology between Sunni and Shia, and also we've been talking about the historical point of view of what happened and what created the division between the two, my next question would be, how should us youth in modern era, in 2014, look at these differences? Is it still necessary for us to talk about whether Imam Ali is the next predecessor, is the next Imam for Muslim after the death of Muhammad? Does that conversation still relevant? And how should we, if it is still relevant, how should we integrate that in terms of communicating and bridging between Shia and Sunni? Because if we're bridging the two and we're keep having this great division, is that possible, do you think?
Well, you bring up an interesting point, because this debate has been the cause of significant arguments and anger between various communities for many years. But at the same time, it's an important conversation. I think the way to resolve this is that we have to have the conversation in the right way. We have to have it in an academic way. We have to have it in a way where we are only seeking to promote understanding. It's not really the goal of Shias to convert the Muslim world or to make the Muslim world follow Shiism or the like. The goal of Shiism and Shias is merely to tell the truth about who we are and what we believe. And I would think that the same is true of the Sunni community. So I think it's always important to be able to talk about the truth, whether it's in modern times or in reference to history. But we have to do it in such a way where we're not insulting one another, where we are talking in a way that promotes knowledge and understanding and friendship, and not in a way that promotes hurt feelings or anything of the like. So it's an important conversation to have. We just have to do it in the right way. The importance of the conversation does not extend, however, to the problems that our communities are facing, where we see that many communities are fighting, whether verbally or physically. I think in that regard, we have to promote an understanding and a conversation on being close to one another and focus more on what we have in common than any historical differences. In that way, we'll reduce a lot of the problems that we're having by focusing on community issues. Are we having issues with our schools, our taxes, our roads? Under a focus on relevant modern-day topics to promote friendship, and then later on we can discuss.
Yes. This is Sahar again. And I want to thank you both for this, thoughtful and important discussion. And one, learning a lot of information and learning perspectives from the two of you at the same time, and also, going into this concept of what to do next. You're absolutely right, Mr. Husain. We have a lot of very serious problems in our communities, created by issues of poverty, lack of education, not enough schools, etc. So one of the efforts that has been going on in the last several years is this idea that dialogue, having the conversation in the right manner, is the way to solve the problems. Waskito is going to share with us his experience. He had an experience. They actually his slide is how to create an interfaith engagement activities. I had the opportunity to attend a camp that Waskito did. He'll tell us more about it in details. It was the Youth Interfaith Camp. It was in Indonesia, in a beautiful city actually north of Yogyakarta. And I had a chance to meet 25 amazing Indonesian youths from various backgrounds who had come together to have that conversation. They were from different ways of thinking in Islam. There were Christians among them, Buddhists among them. It was a wonderful experience. So go ahead, Waskito, and let us know about this program. And maybe also, Mr. Husain, at the end, you can comment about, you know, what are the things that YES Alumni can do to do more of these types of activities? Go ahead, Waskito.
Sahar. So I will be presenting the project that I did last year, but however, I would like to start by this. This is the general idea, the general steps that I have taken last year in making my project. So when I was about to make my project, these are things that I consider. Hold on. First is the topic. Which first is the problem? What is the problem that has been identified that the activity might help? All of this is quite easy. This are your surroundings. When you have this problem, the next thing that you need to do is not discussing about what kind of project you should be having, but first you need to consider all these things: the time, the budget, the social conditions and the safety, the bureaucracy in your country, in your area, the knowledge of the matters that you have, the resources that you have, and the sustainability that you can create. After that, you can move on to the topic that you want to talk about, because sometimes in one problem there are more than one topic, and you can choose which topic you want to talk about. You want to talk about in your activity based on these considerations. And then after that, you can set the goals, you can set the objectives, and you can also set the content and the methodology, which I will be talking next. And then this is the general idea, and this process actually I implemented in my project last year, and we're going to go through that one by one. First, the problem. Indonesia in 2013, I see growing radicalisms among youth in schools and universities spread by radical organizations. More and more of them are not willing to be friends with people with other religion. They started to have online community where there are only Muslim inside them, no Christians, and even in high school. And that's the problem that I see. And then after that, I have to take some consideration. I want to solve the problem, right? So I took some consideration before that. These are my consideration. This is the real consideration that I had last year, the time. In 2013, the committee, my friends and I, are all full-time students, and we have to conduct this project in 1 year. The budget that we have was $3,000 from the American Council. The social condition back then was that Indonesia is tolerant, is relatively safe. We do have free speech. However, interfaith activities have a very bad stigma, where often people think that when you talk about interfaith activities, you are talking about justifying all religions. So that's the first thing that I need to consider. I also need to consider that in Indonesia, the bureaucracy is quite complicated. The police are quite corrupt. And the knowledge of the matters are... This is the knowledge of theology, even though I study Islamic law, but my knowledge in terms of all the religions are very limited. And this is where I come to the questions: am I going to talk about theology? Am I going to talk about the essence, the common ground between two religions, which I don't really know quite a lot? The resources that we have in Yogyakarta, there are 5 training of trainers alumni. One of them actually is here tonight, Primi from Indonesia. And also, we have quite great support from the consortium organization in Indonesia. Based on this consideration, we created Youth Interfaith Camp. As you can see in our tagline, it says friendship, teamwork, and volunteerism, because we are focusing on creating friendship between interfaith youth. As you can see that even though the problem is a religious problem of religions, however, the approach that I take for this project is not talking about theology. Instead, I'm talking about friendship, teamwork, and volunteerism. What this project was, that it's a 3-day training on friendship and teamwork among interfaith youth. We invite 25 youth from all over Indonesia and also Malaysia. And this is where it gets interesting. They're coming from 9 different religions, and some of these are not even recognized by the Indonesian government. We have the Adventist Church, you have the agnostic. The Sabta Dharma is somehow animistic religion in Indonesia, and it is we always consider to create an inclusive project. That's why we also invite 2 students from a disability group. What we did in this project was, first, there was an outbound training where they are experiencing working with people coming from different religion. And then we also have lectures from organization partners. We have the privilege to be working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, which helped us quite a lot in terms of bureaucracy and in terms of safety. And we also have friendship and teamwork training. This is where my project is different from other projects, because we're not only just having lectures or visiting church or visiting the mosques. I mean, what we did was actually we spent 3 to 4 months in developing a friendship and teamwork training. This training was developed by the 4 of us here in the front. All of us are TOT alumni, and we work really hard for 3 to 4 months in developing this training design, which you can download afterwards. We also have trees planting, and we also have the creating the training design. TOT actually, what TOT is, training for trainers is actually an opportunity, a training for YES alumni, not only for AFS, but also for all consortium of YES program, to come and together in one place to talk about how to create a project. How to create a project, all the things that I talked about, how we have to consider the problem, the topic, the goals, everything are taught in TOT. So if you have the opportunity to join one, please go ahead and join TOT, because it's very beneficial, especially for interfaith dialogue. We have, and then I will continue with the agenda for my Interfaith Camp. We had trees planting. As you can see, the lady here in red veil, she's actually blind. So we are really proud of our inclusiveness in our project, because we are able to invite not only those coming from different religion, but also coming from different from the disability community. We did this the trees planting to implement. This is on the last day. We did this to practice what the participant had learned for the past 3 days. They've been talking about how to make friends. They've been talking about how to work in a team. They have been talking about how to overcome prejudice and stereotype. This is where they implement all those knowledge. Now, the challenges that I have was that I think I don't have a lot of knowledge about the religions at then, and interfaith dialogue is not a popular subject among YES alumni. And I also have the problem with the bureaucracy and the problem with the sustainability. What I did was that this is the tips on making interfaith activity that I learned from last year, the timing. You need to be factoring in the scale of the project and the resources that you have. for my project, which is a 3 days and 2 nights project, I spent for about 6 to 7 months in preparing them. Finding partners, it could be NGOs, and it could be government bodies. This can come handy when you have problem with the you can government bodies. If one of your friends' father, for example, are working for the government, you can you can be partners with them. What happened was last year, the police in my area tried to take a lot of money from us, and what we did was actually we called the Ministry of International Affairs in Indonesia, and he connected me personally to the head of the police office in my city. Only then the police allow us to have this project. So partners are important. Next is finding solid group of team. You may have a lot of committee, but you may not have a lot of people who have the same passion as you do. For example, there are 25 committee for my project, but there are not a lot of people who have the same passion as myself. What happened is that even though I had a lot of help, I ended up having all the emotional burden on me. So it's important for you to have a solid group of team which have the same passion as you. And you should also consider the type of activity that you can have. You can have lectures, you can have visit, you can have trainings, you can have blogs. No matter how small or big the activities are, it depends on the resources that you have. And you also need to think about the sustainability. Sustainability is hard, even for me, for myself last year. So what I did, because it's hard because it's hard for me to control the 25 participants once they come back home. What I did was that I created a good documentation for the interfaith activity, which in form of the training design, which I can use in the future. So the sustainability is not only the participants who are keep promoting interfaith dialogue, but you have the knowledge that are sustainable. So if I have to make another project, I can just refer to the interfaith training design that I created last year. So that's I think that's a very good tips in terms of sustainability. So yeah, and if you have the time, if you have the energy, please go ahead and study theology, because I think in Indonesia, among YES Alumni in Indonesia, I am the only one who studied Islamic law, and there are not a lot of people that I can have discussion with. So if you are studying theology right now, no matter what kind of theology, whether it's Christianity or Muslim, go ahead, please. You can feel free to contact me and have like a conversation with me to talk about these kind of things. So yeah, that is my project last year, and me sharing how to create an interfaith activity. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Waskito. I mean, for really sharing the effort behind this and the thought behind this. One of the things that would be very helpful to hear from is Mr. Husain. I know that you've also done interfaith work. What kind of advice would you need be able to give to our YES alumni? You've seen some of the questions they asked. How do you actually talk to overcome an issue like speaking with people who want to extort money from you? I know we don't necessarily face that in the United States, but perhaps you also have experiences or any other comments you have.
Sure thing. Well, I think one of the most important things with pursuing interfaith and intrafaith relations is that you base the dialogue on identity and maintain your identity. No one is trying to convert anyone else, whether they're Shia or not. And being honest and open about what you believe and honest and open about wanting to understand the other beliefs of the other person is really a great place for dialogue. A lot of friendships and relationships are built on trust. So the more honest you are, the more you're going to be able to maintain that and also build the respect of the person you're speaking with. So I would say that use identity as a way to understand Shias. Be open to us about what you believe, about any confusion you have about what we believe, about any misconceptions or concerns you have. And I think you'll find that most Shias are very happy to clear up any misconceptions. I see that there are some questions from the chat. If it's okay, I'll get to them.
Okay.
From Mr. Ahmad is what are the basis of the Imamat principles? Is there a text that mentions who they are, and are they all from the offspring of the Prophet? The Imamat is based upon the principles elucidated in that Quranic verse I mentioned, Surah Baqarah, verse 124. Specifically in the last half of the ayat, Prophet Ibrahim asks, after being declared the Imam of the nations, and of my offspring, and Allah says, my promise will not reach the wrongdoers. So we see that, number one, Allah refers to his promise, and the promise is the Imamat. And number two, it will not reach wrongdoers. So our interpretation is that no one who is an Imam designated by Allah can be capable of sin. They can't do any wrongdoing. And number two, that they are from the lineage of Prophet Ibrahim. And number three, we see that only Allah can declare who is an Imam. Just as he declared Prophet Ibrahim to be an Imam of the nations, he would declare every other Imam later on during the line. There are several texts in Shiism that names them the 12 Imams. For example, Kitab al-Irshad, Kitab al-Kafi, and quite a few other books you'll see in Shia sources. I don't think you'll see very many of them in Sunni sources, except for in Sahih Bukhari, which is a main Sunni text. You'll see that the Prophet says, there will be 12 leaders after me who will decide the affairs of Islam, all of them from Quraysh. And of course the Imams are from the same tribe as Prophet Muhammad, which was the Quraysh tribe.
Wow.
Nathan, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. You're going on to the next question, which came from Nathan about the Shia customs that some of us have heard about. Go ahead, please, Mr. Husain.
Sure. Yeah, there are some practices that Shias engage in that others may find confusing or have questions about. I just want to address them very upfront. The first is this idea of self-flagellation. I'm sure you'll see on the news every year that on the 10th of Muharram, Shias engage in widespread self-flagellation where they hit themselves with blades or the like, causing blood loss. And a lot of these photos you guys see on the news of the like. This is a practice that some Shias engage in. I don't want you to think that every Shia engages in it, or even that most Shias engage in it. You'll see that it's a minority practice, and it's done in a way that doesn't result in any permanent damage. It doesn't result in any major injuries. It's just kind of a practice that some people engage in because of their extreme love and grief over the death of Imam Hussein. And it's a practice that takes place in every country, or many countries that Shias reside in. But it's not something our scholars encourage. It's just something that people do. The other big practice is, you might have heard of something called mutaf, which is a concept of a fixed-term marriage, which means that you can set a start date and an end date on marriage, so that your marriage will conclude, for example, in 5 years without divorce. It will simply end the marriage. This is the concept of mutaf. Basically, it's a concept that was allowed during the time of the Prophet, and there are many useful reasons for it to exist today. It's mainly used in the Shia community as an engagement. Because as you know, in Islam, there's no such thing as being engaged. There's either being married or not married, and there's nothing in between. So for us, we use it as a period of engagement so the bride and groom can get to know each other within the constraints of Islam in an appropriate manner. There is the controversy that it's used for prostitution, that it's used for illicit acts, but that is largely not present in the Shia world. This is a religious act committed by religious people who, have no desire to commit any illicit or immoral activities. Anything can be abused, but certainly this is not the purpose of Mata. In terms of other customs, I mean, you'll find that Shias mostly do the same customs and activities as Sunnis. Same with dress. They'll dress the same way. They'll eat the same food. They'll be from the same countries. If you saw me in the webcam, I have a beard, brown skin, and the like. Just like you might see from any other Sunni Muslim from a regular Muslim country from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Husain. Yeah, food for thought, information, I think many of us didn't know, and at the same time, keeping that message again that we have so much in common, other than differences. I think we can just have one last question because we're a few minutes over, and maybe going back to these efforts to create the friendships and such. I think one of the questions is actually not that came from Pandu on sustainability. Again. Maybe we can just change that question. I'll change that question a little bit. How can you create a sustainable project? Are your participants still engaged and involved? And I can ask this question both to Waskito and to Mr. Husain. I mean, when you engage people in interfaith dialogue and you have an event or you have a series of events, then what? Has your mission been accomplished, or is there a need to continue engaging them?
I think there is a need to continue, and after you have the initial events where you invite one another and interact with one another, it's important to move on to important projects that are affecting your local community. It's one thing to establish friendship, but to establish a community, to establish a familiar relationship almost with the others, you need to work on what are the real problems that your community is facing, and you need to work on it together. That will promote the real and true interfaith relationship, where it goes beyond simply, your religion is interesting, my religion is interesting. It moves into we're working together because we're living together. We're solving problems together because we want to make a better world for all of us. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, Waskito, in the Indonesian context, how can that happen? How can YES Alumni can make that vision happen?
Yeah, I think we need to consider that. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So yep. I think we need to consider YES Alumni, many YES Alumni are below 25 years old, 24 years old. Many of them are still full-time students. Many of them are not exactly working full-time as in an organization who are dealing with this kind of topic. That's why the topic of sustainability is quite hard, especially for me personally. Last year, it was really hard for me to really keep in touch with those who participated with the program. We did have a communication through blogs and also Facebook groups for the next 3 months. However, they will have their own, I will have my own activity, and they will have too. So the trick that I did was what I said in the beginning, that sustainability does not only mean that you are always be in touch with the participants after the event, but the sustainability of idea, the sustainability of the methodology is also important, especially for young people like all YES alumni, because an interfaith if you have passion in interfaith relations such as like this, I think it's a process. You cannot have that much impact in the beginning. You have to start somewhere, and this is where I think what I did last year is a good start. Where I, even though the sustainability of the participants is lacking, I have the sustainability of idea and methodology which can be developed in the future. So I have a different.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. It's a few minutes after the hour, 10:10, but we have really enjoyed this conversation. I want to say, going back to the YES Alumni world, that there are opportunities for you to get funding for projects. So if you or other YES alumni you know are interested in conducting this type of a project or another type, we have an annual grant cycle. And of course, there are other opportunities to receive grant funding. So you have resources. Waskito has kindly made himself available, and I think one of the things that we have learned today is to reach out to partners, including, for example, people like Mr. Husain or his organization or a similar organization in your community. And I want to thank everyone very much. I want to thank many of you have posted comments, especially about initiatives like the United Religion Initiative. I think that there's a lot that we can learn, and there's a lot of good efforts as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Husain. Thank you very much, Waskito, and thank you to everyone else. Bethany, Christine, do you have any final comments?
No, I think that's great. I just want to say thank you to both of our speakers, both Rahat and Waskito. I think it's really, really valuable information. And alumni, if you do plan one of these projects in your communities, don't forget to tell us about it. You can submit a story about any of the alumni projects that you do through the YES program website. There's a submit a story button, and you can just type us a little report and send some photos of the work that you're doing, and we can post a story about it on our website and share with everyone the great work that you're doing. And I also want to let everyone know that the next alumni event that we'll be having is going to be in early December. It's a virtual film festival, and we'll be showcasing some of the digital stories that other YES alumni have been telling and have made short films and other digital media pieces. So look for advertisements about that. That event will be on December 11th. And so you'll be able to log in and watch those short films. And if you yourself are a filmmaker or have an idea for making a short film or want to learn how, let us know. We're happy to see if we can get your story as part of the film festival. So you can contact us on Facebook or here in the chat, let Bethany know. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining. If you have friends who want to watch this, or if you had trouble hearing some of the things or just want to watch it again, you can access the recording on the YES Alumni Resources page, which is on the YES website under the Alumni tab. You can see the recording, and you can also see Waskito's PowerPoint presentation, and that will be up later today. So thank you again. We'll go ahead and leave the chat box open so you all can continue having conversation for another 5 to 10 minutes. And otherwise, we're going to go ahead and shut off the recording, and